Hello, girls, guys, or otherwise. This is Rich with your Saturday spot of the Witchy Book Club series. We are going through the Outer Temple of Witchcraft, Chapter 3 by Christopher Penzak. If you do not have your own copy, go ahead and get your own copy by going into the description box. There is a link down there, an Amazon link. I do suggest getting it from a small business owner, uh, a witchy store if you have one that's close to you and it is safe for you to do so. Go ahead and go out and get your copy from one of them, or you can order it on Amazon by clicking the link below. Uh, let's see, what else? We have some particulars. One, if you are part of the 20 to 30% who have not yet subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right here. Pardon me, I am having difficulty speaking today. Apparently, it is 10:30 at night, and I had a full day of work and puppy and kitty drama and puppy loves and more puppy loves, and it's just been great. Anyway, I should probably start tweeting out more photos because I'm taking photos like crazy of this puppy. So cute. Anyway, hit that subscribe button if you are not yet subscribed. Hit the bell notification so you can get notified whenever new videos are posted. Let's see, what else? Hit that like button. It helps appease the algorithmic gods of YouTube. All hail the algorithmic gods of YouTube. And also leave a comment if you agree, disagree, or are indifferent of any of the things that we discuss here. You know, I always like hearing what other people have to say about, what my take is on certain parts of a chapter. So we are going through chapter by chapter. I will say there might be some needing to get ahead of reading for me. Like today, I read most of this chapter in one sitting. But when we get to something like chapter 13, that I believe is, yeah, it is legit like 60 pages long. That's not easy for me. Now, granted, there are a lot of pictures and whatnot and figures, but that's not an easy task for me on a good day. So, yeah. Yeah, but let's go through this one. This wasn't a terribly long chapter. What, like 9, 10 pages, something like that? I think it was 9 pages. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your beverage, whatever it may be. Of course, I'm drinking cappuccino, and then I'm going to go straight to bed afterwards. Does nothing for me as far as caffeine and jitteriness and whatnot. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get into the chapter here, chapter 3, The Ethical Witch. We start every chapter, as per usual, by reading the first line and seeing how it really rounds out the chapter. First line, first 2 lines. This week I want to do the first 2 lines. I am always staggered by the number of people who think witches can do anything they want. Those outside the craft really have no idea of the strong ethical philosophy that is involved in magic. Good, strong opening to this chapter. Well versed, very well written, and I could not agree more. There are so many times, if you say to somebody, "Oh, I practice witchcraft," they're like, "No, don't hex me, don't curse me, don't put a curse on me." And I'm like, clearly you know nothing of what we do. So let's start with little chunks of that's not what I do, and I have ethical standards that I live by and stand by for my different works and whatnot. The only time I ever go negative, and I'll talk about this later, is in extreme cases. So, yeah, I think this is something that is a product of kind of Hollywood, the satanic panic of the 80s, and also going as far back as the witch trial periods and whatnot. I think that this mindset of don't put a curse on me, you gonna do a spell on me? No. No, not unless you absolutely deserve it will I do a spell on you. And even if you did really deserve it, probably still wouldn't. might consider it, might do something little, at least to keep you away or keep you at bay, but no, not really going to do something that's going to kill you. Um, so yeah, people obviously, whenever they're thinking witch, they don't think that there is a huge philosophical uh, backing behind it. There's a lot of thought process that goes into doing a working. At least for, I would say, most people who consider themselves witches. There's a long thought process that goes through all this. Going down the page here, witches in the truest sense of the word are those who use their sacred knowledge and connection in service to others, the tribe, the world, and highest good. Completely agree. For the most part. There's always going to be some nuance in there. Using a blanket statements, I hate blanket statements. That's like saying, all of these people are bad, or all of those people are good. No, you're going to have some nuance in there. Not all evangelical Christians who hate gay people. Not all of them are bad people. A lot, and I will stress, a vast majority are really misled on the facts and details of what their book says. So there has to be some nuance. There's a difference between being bad and being drastically misled. And when confronted with true facts, can really shake a person's belief system to the core, and can actually help get them out of that mindset, help them see, things from a different perspective. But sometimes it can even root them even further into their belief system and the negative downward spiral that has. The hate and vitriol that comes along with some of that. So yeah, I mean, there is nuance there. So I kind of hate blanket statements whenever he uses them, and he does use them quite a lot, from what I'm seeing here, because I've pinpointed this out several times in the Inner Temple. So he does seem to go with the alls, or no witches do this, or no witches believe that. Again, there's nuance there. So, as with any book review or book club series that I will ever do, I'm going to treat it with enough finesse, but also give an honest opinion on what is good and what is bad. Just because somebody is a respected member of the community doesn't mean they have carte blanche to misrepresent some people, even if they don't know that they're doing it. There are some witchcraft books, and this is a side tangent here. There are some witchcraft books that say Christo-Paganism isn't a thing, or Christian witches aren't a thing, and I'm like, I completely disagree. And how dare you say that how dare you gatekeep witchcraft and tell people who is or is not a witch? So yeah, that's something that just really gets me. And if I were doing a book review or a book club series with a book like that, where that comes up, yes, they may be a revered member of the witchy community. However, they don't have carte blanche to gatekeep if I call myself a witch or not. Get what I'm saying? Anyway, I just had things with that sense of the true sense of the word. There should be nuance there, and it should be denoted that there is nuance. Maybe instead of saying witches in the truest sense, saying something such as witches by my definition, or by my within my tradition, or something like that. Saying something like that. Okay. And then he says in the next paragraph, I don't know why paragraph has a T on the end of it whenever I said it. He says in the next paragraph, a witch has many definitions. And I think it was in the Inner Temple we discussed it. One of the exercise was, what is a witch? What is your definition of witch and witchcraft and magic, and what does all that mean? I think it was in the first couple chapters, to be honest with you. What are these definitions? What do they mean to you? And I think that is something that should be examined from time to time. I like to do it about once a year, maybe a little bit more, depending on how drastic of a change my practice is going through. Sitting down, and I'll get into this later, is sitting down with my beliefs page in my Book of Shadows and really examining, does all this hold true to me? Is there anything I need to add or take away that does or doesn't apply to me now, since my practice has grown and evolved and changed over the years? Putting that as a record of, this is what I believe. But I'll get into that later, because we're going to discuss that. But also doing that with some of these definitions, like, what is a witch? What is magic? What are your definitions for it? What is the jumping off point that we go through when talking about definitions and their meaning? Or when we talk about defining words and their meanings to us as individuals. Okay, moving on to page 34. He says, all witches and Wiccans are pagans, but not all pagans consider themselves witches or Wiccans. Again, there has to be nuance here, because saying all witches and Wiccans are pagans. Not all witches are pagans. You have Christian witches, you have atheist witches. When this was made back in, 2004, I think, 2008. Granted, there wasn't much as far as people speaking about being an atheist witch. I've met a few of them, that they work with the energies of certain gods and goddesses. I'm more of a hard polytheist, where it's like, these are physical entities with stories and backgrounds and nuance in their own characters. But there are some soft polytheists who work with just energy. There are witches who are atheists who just work with energy. And I think saying that all witches and Wiccans are pagans, there's so much nuance there that needs to be denoted. Saying all Wiccans are pagans, but not all pagans consider themselves Wiccan, is more of a true statement. I think I've met one, I think Liloken, to be honest with you. Heathen Haven, right? Or no, Hellbound Heathen. Heathen Haven was the other channel. Hellbound Heathen, very, very smart individual, I'll give him that, and I very much enjoy his videos. But I do believe he is an atheist Wiccan. He has been in the Wiccan tradition, but is an atheist. And I could be misrepresenting him, but I think that's what he's described in his past videos, and that might not even hold true to him himself anymore. But I think that's what he said in the past, and like I said, could be wrong. Go watch his channel, go through his videos. A lot of them, his debunking videos, are fantastic. I love them. They're hilarious. So yeah, go watch his channel and tell me if I'm right. But I think he has in the past considered himself atheist witch. So, yeah, I mean, or atheist Wiccan witch. And I, like I said, could be totally incorrect on there. Um, but I think that's, point being, there is nuance to this phrase. Stop using blanket phrases. Yeah, so I'm going to get off my soapbox on that one. Moving on to page 35, it takes a dedication. It takes a dedication and a discipline like any other path. Talking about, your practice and path, working and whatnot. And that is when I started sharing what simple knowledge I had gathered from my teachers, and ever so informally began teaching. Okay. I will say, and this is whenever he was talking about whenever you first come in, expecting it to be like, oh, I declare myself a witch. Now I can do all these spells and, everything's just going to be fixed. No, absolutely not. It takes a lot of work. For one, learning terminology, learning how to meditate, learning how to quiet your mind and just go into that state. There is a ton of reading and journaling and reflection. There is a lot to being on a witchy path of sorts, to have a witchcraft practice. So yeah, I like that he puts it here. This is not necessarily an easy path. You have, let's take, for example, Christianity. In Christianity, you can have a belief and you can go to church and, you get baptized and, you go through all the stages, all that stuff. And then, yeah, you're a member of the church. You're one of Christ's followers. Fantastic. But you don't really necessarily have to progress past that point. In order to keep on doing witchcraft and keep on doing different spell work and, stretching your muscles just a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and even getting to the point where it is easier for you to do spell crafting, there is a lot of learning to do. And you can certainly whip up something quickly, but knowing the why behind what you do adds so much more richness to your practice. Having the discipline to quiet your mind, go to that place where you are just centered and in communion with the divine is a huge deal. These are huge steps to take in your practice. I wanted to highlight this part. It's whenever he started sharing what simple knowledge he had gathered from his teachers, and ever so informally began teaching. I will say this. Being part of the pagan perspective pushed me. It pushed me in ways I didn't, like, there were questions coming in that I didn't even think about ever asking. Like, one of the most fun videos that I did was the one on dudism. I didn't know dudism was a thing. I never watched The Big Lebowski. It was on my list of things to watch, but I never watched The Big Lebowski. Never knew anything about it. I didn't know Jediism was a thing. There were so many different topics that came up that I didn't do much research on. One of the hosts has gone on to do spirit keeping, which is something I still want to learn a lot more about before I really get into it. But it seems so intriguing and everything at the time, and then it kind of had to take a back burner because I was doing other things. But it pushed me to start branching out and realizing that there are other forms of practice other than what's written down in these books, the 101 type of books. There are practices that are being developed now in today's day and age that have never really been explored by books. And for people who are book witches, who their only form of teaching, formal teaching, was from a book because that's all we had. As somebody like that, I'm looking at him like, how are you guys coming up with this stuff? The what is it? The pop magic, I think, is but magic in popular culture and whatnot, and doing stuff like that. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was a thing. That, and like doing magic with emojis and whatnot. These are things that are happening. And until I got into a situation where I wasn't necessarily a teacher, quote unquote, but where we had a following of people who came every week to listen to what we had to say about a certain subject, whatever it was, until I started really kind of teaching or sharing my practice with people. That's whenever I really started to delve into things and start researching them more and more. And I would encourage anybody out there that if you want your practice to kind of like evolve and be pushed to the limits, start making YouTube videos or posting a blog or something of that sort, where you have people ask you questions. Any questions. Nothing's really off limits, unless it's like, what kind of underwear are you wearing? Or are you wearing boxers or briefs? I'll let you wonder. Anyway, yeah, so I wanted to highlight that if you actually start even informally teaching somebody, or just having a little table talk session where you're sitting there and you're just discussing, things of the occult and whatnot, and somebody brings up the topic of, hey, what do you think of pop culture type magic? What are your thoughts on new gods? Are there new gods being formed? And I think the one is like Asphalta is the goddess of roads. It's like, okay, this is a thing somebody came up with, which many deity are, and that's okay. Isn't necessarily somebody that I would incorporate into my practice? Probably not. However, I think this is intriguing, and I think it should be explored and evaluated. And when people come up with these topics, and you're like, wow, I didn't realize this was a thing that people are doing. Having those table talk type of sessions with people can really help you grow and learn about something that you didn't even realize was a thing. Just so you know, everything is a thing. Moving on. He says, witchcraft at its heart is simple. Okay, I do agree. At its core, it is very simple. Things have simple ways of working, or simple modes of travel, going in the path of least resistance and whatnot. But to truly connect and have things all go smoothly, I think it takes a little bit more. It can be simple in its nature of, you're putting spells, or you're mixing herbs to do spells and whatnot. And you sit there and you put your intention into it and you send it out, and that's it. Sure, that's very simple. However, going a little bit deeper, and this is what he was talking about with the dedication and discipline, is going a little deeper. What are each one of those herbs for? What are the intentions behind those certain herb choices? Why this one that's for protection, and why not this one that is for protection and strength? Something like, and I'm just pulling stuff out of my butt here, but You get what I'm saying. Is at its heart, it's very simple. I can pick out the 5,000 spells book and do a quick spell and I'll be fine. But knowing why I'm choosing Dragon's Blood rather than Sandalwood is a big deal to me, because I add Dragon's Blood to everything um, to amp up. It's an amplifier for me. But I would use Sandalwood as like a holy incense. So knowing the why behind what you're doing on that is big. Let's see here. He says, the first law of witchcraft is the law of three. Everything comes back to you threefold. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with the law of three. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be, 3 times the magnitude. If this the type of stuff that's like almost like prosperity gospel stuff. A lot of Christian references today. Whenever people say, well, whenever you give to me, God will give more back to you. Well, no, that's not how finances work. Thanks. Is it possible? Absolutely, it is. Is it probable that you're not just being a snake oil salesman? No, I think that's a little bit more of the probable thing here. So, could it happen? Absolutely. Is it probable? No. But whenever it comes to the law of three, it's not necessarily 3 times it'll come back to you. It's not like I send out, good vibes and good vibes come. No. It might be a little bit, and then I have a little bit come back. It might be I send out negative vibes. It might not show up for years. But I don't necessarily agree with the law of three, because it gets tied into this, it's going to be 3 times as bad. It's going to be, or it's going to be 3 times as good. It's going to just build momentum and hit you like a brick. And no, not always. I think the universe has a little bit, again, nuance, a little bit more nuance to it than what this phrase is able to maintain. I think it's an easy way to have that conversation, but I don't necessarily think that is a solid law. But I do think that it is a good stepping point of examining, what you're putting out. It's going to come back to you in some way, shape, or form. There may be kickbacks to it. You may get hurt from something. You may have blessings from something that you put out there. But it's not necessarily going to be times 3. He goes on to say further down, people think that the law of karma, think of it as the law of karma, but the concept of karma is a bit more complex than this, particularly when involved with the concepts of reincarnation. Think of the law of three, sometimes called the law of return, as a principle in physics. It simply is. There is no moral standard to it, but it can feel that way. I would probably liken it more to karma than a law of return. And only because it doesn't always return to you in this lifetime. Sometimes the things that you do in this lifetime are the things that are going to affect you drastically in the next life. So, yeah, in the next lifetime. I think there, again, is more nuance and more complexity to the universe than what we're actually able to verbalize here on a page, in a chapter, in a big huge book. And I think setting it as a general rule or a general thing to consider is something that should be done, but I think that it is often misconstrued, and I think it is often um, overanalyzed and overused. Such as, like, there are some people that they get so edgy about doing any sorts of spell work because what about the law of three? What's that gonna do? You know, how's it gonna come back to me? Well, if you have the discipline and you have the dedication to your practice and you're looking at all of the results that your magic can affect, then you're not really going to, you've already thought of all the effects of the rule of three, so, or the law of return, and how it's going to affect everything. So you put that in your spell work. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting wrapped around the axle on this, but and some of this is just simple wording and how we communicate and how we can make things a little bit easier to understand without having these buzzwords of law of three, law of return, and you know, this simply is physics. No, I think it has a lot more complexity to it that is not being given its due. And that's not necessarily Chris's fault here, Christopher Penzak. It's not necessarily his fault. A lot of people do this. And a lot of people have these buzzwords of the law of return, and what's coming back at you is what you put out. And while I do agree with that to a certain extent, I don't think this is a hard and fast rule that always applies. So, moving on to page 36 here. He says the second rule in witchcraft is not so universal in nature, but is it really a suggestion as to how to deal with the universal rule? And then he goes on, it's known among witches as the Wiccan Reed, or simply the Reed. I'm going to skip down to the bottom of this paragraph here. The Wiccan Reed, in its most basic form, is do what thou will, and let it harm none. Another popular version is and it harm none, do what ye will. Okay, and I was thinking about reading the extended Wiccan Reed to you all. I'm not going to do that. I am way too damn tired. And I'm already fumbling over my words here. Maybe I'll do a, you know what? I think I might do a Witchy Wednesday video on just the Wiccan Reed. And, oh boy, that might be even, I might have to break it up into a small series of examining the reed and what it has in there. I think we might have to do that. But anyway. Yeah, I think going back to this, do what you will, or do what thou will, and it harm none, or and it harm none, do what you will. I don't always agree with that, because you're always going to harm something in some way, shape, or form. You're going to impede your will on somebody, something, somewhere. But I think by examining your spell work and examining the effect that it might have on other individuals is probably at the core what you should take away from the read, is, or from this phrase of the read. Examine what you're doing carefully. You are being entrusted with a lot of responsibility, and you're gonna mess up. Everybody does. But I got an itchy cheek. But the way that we combat that is by delving in deeper, knowing more of what's going to happen with our spell work and whatnot. Just holding scrutiny to your workings. And how is it going to affect everybody? Is it going to affect anybody? Which it always will. Easy question answered there. It always will affect somebody. Moving on. Each situation, like each moment in time, is unique and individual. Each individual must weigh the actions and results. Thank you. Absolutely agree. Weigh your decisions, make a clear, conscious decision of what you are doing with each spell work. He goes on to say, further down page 36, I'm sorry. You must live your life and live by the consequences of your actions. I'm going to skip around here, but I'm going to stay in the same area. You live your life and learn from your mistakes and realize that many of those mistakes are great teachers and blessings, even if they don't necessarily feel good at the time. They reveal us to ourselves so that we can grow and transform. I do agree with this. Of course, again, there's nuance to this. There are certain things that happen in our lives that might be mistakes of ours, might be the mistakes of others, that we end up having to live it with in our lives. And I don't want to say that certain deliberate choices are mistakes, because I think that's I think that's just a disgusting way of saying mistakes, or these things are mistakes. But I think that there is a lot that can be taught by certain actions or certain things that have happened to you, whether they are something that you did yourself or that somebody did to you. And I don't want to get much more into that without giving a trigger warning of what I'm referring to. And it's not something that happened to me, but I do realize that there is nuance here when talking about living your life and learning from your mistakes. Sometimes mistakes are just that, mistakes. They are life lessons. However, yes, they're teachers and whatnot, but they're not always blessings. Let's be honest here. Some things just suck, and unfortunately, sometimes we have to deal with those in our lives. But again, I just wanted to point out there is nuance here, and it could probably go deeper. And there is part of this where other people have to take responsibility for their actions that they have imposed on other people. So, yeah, I do want to point that out. So, moving on to the next paragraph here. So, contrary to popular belief, witches do not do curses or cast evil hexes as unsuspecting people on unsuspecting people. Jeez, I cannot read. I'm sure some people do this with their knowledge, but they have a different definition of the word witch than most witches I know, and unfortunately, they harm the reputation of us all. Okay. Again, I have an issue with gatekeeping terms for people. Saying something like, they are not witches, is like saying that they are not Christians. They are followers of Christ, so therefore they are Christians. They are practitioners of witchcraft, so therefore they are witches. Again, if that's the definition that they go by. And we have no right to gatekeep a term for somebody else. However, I also do agree with him to a certain extent of, most witches don't do curses. or cast evil hexes on unsuspecting people. Sometimes they do, though. Even people whose primary focus of their practice is love and light and all things bubbly. Sometimes witches need to throw down and put some people in their place. And that is just something that needs to happen sometimes. Uh, and there's some people that doll out repercussions a lot more quickly than others. I am very slow to do that. I've only had to do it a couple times to put somebody in their place. And yes, I am fully willing to admit that I have done it without their consent, uh, as far as a spell work. I have done it without their knowledge of me doing it. I have, yeah, but whenever I do it, it is not to harm or punish. It is in order to save somebody else or save them from themselves. So it is more of a saving act or an act of uh, of help in some way, shape, or form than an act of revenge or an act of malicious intent. And he does address that in this chapter. I think it's actually in this section where he says that some people do this because they think they're doing good whenever that's not really the case. Um, is it on? I think it's actually, it's somewhere around here because I remember reading it. Yeah, I think it's in the part about motivation. I think that's where it's at. The next part I want to look at is on page 39 under personal honor. He writes, since the craft is sparse in determining a universal code of behavior, it puts the burden of creating a personal code of ethics on the practitioner. This is simply for you and no others. What is right for you might not be right for everyone else, and through witchcraft we realize this. Absolutely. I think everybody, at very least, as a writing prompt, probably for your Book of Shadows, should write down what your code of ethics are. I have not personally done this, but I think I need to, just to gauge where I'm at and say, this is what I'm willing to do. And this is under those conditions what I'm willing to do and why I'm willing to do that. And these are the lines I will not cross without giving it long and in-depth thinking and consideration. Because, of course, there's even nuance in the things that you will not do. So I think that sitting down and having a discussion with yourself or journaling it in your Book of Shadows is a worthwhile exercise. And it's actually something I'm planning on doing probably throughout this week. Just jotting things down on scratch paper and saying, okay, what does this mean for me? What are my stances on curses and hexes and anything baneful? And under what conditions am I willing to do that? And why would I be willing to do that? Would there be any other options? You can make a flow chart of if this, then that, Yeah. I think that's going to be a writing exercise for me throughout this entire week because there should be a lot of thought given to something like this and what your ethics are, where you stand, and under what conditions you're willing to break those rules. That the rules, in fact, that you have set for yourself. Further on down page 39, he does discuss white versus black magic. And I think the term black magic anymore is, and it's probably always been this way, but has more or less come to the forefront of my mind as, ways of oppression and whatnot, and how we discuss white being good and black being bad, and the systematic racism that is inherent in even wording such as that, as black and white. So I think that is something that we need to be aware of and be cognizant of the effects of saying stuff like that. On page 41, as time goes on, you will find yourself creating a personal code of honor and an internal practice of spiritual truths that you will not deviate from without deep reflection and inner guidance. Write it out, or some write it out and reflect on it over time. Others carry it with them and with no needs to put it into words. Okay. For one, this got me thinking about my beliefs page, and I've actually done a video of it years ago. But I have this thing that, at least in my mind, the way it started was, I need to write down the things that I believe. This isn't something that somebody taught me, and apparently it's something other witches do. At the beginning of my Book of Shadows, I write down, these are the things that I believe in as of this date, and I will date it. And about once a year, I go back and I read that. And I say, okay, is all of this true? Is there anything that needs to be adjusted or altered? Is there any nuance to be given to something here or there? If I wrote down at the beginning of my practice, back in 2010, if I wrote down, well, I practice white witchcraft. Looking back on it now, I'd be like, wow, that seems like some racist shit. And I need to change that because my vision or my view on black and white witchcraft or black and white magic has drastically changed since then. And knowing what I know now, there are definitely things that I would change in my Book of Shadows on my beliefs page itself. And what I do is, whenever it's time for updating, I'll turn the page to whatever the next page is, the next clean page, and I will write them out and I will date it. So then you have a running log of, you believe this back in this date, and now you believe this, and you see a progression that has happened. And I think doing a personal code of honor or your own ethics code is something that everybody should do. But I also would ask people to take it one step further and do a beliefs page. It doesn't have to be long. I would encourage it to be. But identify everything in your practice that you do. Everything that you believe. And then go into detail about why you believe that. Like, let's say, in my on my beliefs page, I might say that I honor Christ and Sophia. Well, over this way, Christ and Sophia. Yeah, if I can get that right, Christ and Sophia. There we go. That has not always been on my beliefs page, and it is now on my beliefs page. But also telling the story of why I believe that and why I work with those specific individuals. If you have your beliefs page and the wand is something that is very special to you, that is something that you use all the time, write in there why. What is the wand to you, and why does it have so much significance in your particular practice? Because it doesn't to all. Some people don't even use wands because they are blade people, and that's fine. I'm there for it. Some people are no tools, and I don't know how these people live, but kudos to them. Um, but I have always been a tools person. I like tools. I like the tangible. But some people are no tools people. And write that down on your beliefs page. Why that is what it is. Is it that you want to save money? Is it that you don't want to be part of a consumerist environment, or contribute to waste of the planet? Is it just because you have no need for it when all of your tools are right here? Is that what it is? Write it down. Some of these things will take up their own pages. If you have a wand page, write that down in your wand page. If you want to put it in your beliefs page, because that is something that is so integral to your practice, then write it down. I would definitely put Christ and Sophia on my beliefs page as something that I believe in, something that I work with. I would put in there how I use biblical text in my practice. I would put in there how Jelly is my baby and adjusting so well to a new puppy. You want to say hi? Say hi. She hates it when I pick her up. Okay. Yeah, she did not like that one bit. Yeah. I'm sorry, babies. Okay, yeah, we're gonna go to bed right after this. Daddy's gonna edit this tomorrow morning. Because she's tired and she wants to cuddle with Daddy. And who am I to deny her that? Anyway. Sorry for bumping the mic there. He goes into saying about motivation next. He says, after reading up on the ethics of the craft, would-be witches often get discouraged. Okay. Knowing that you're getting into witchcraft and that there may be some things that you have to learn here and there is one thing. Whenever people get discouraged in witchcraft, it's usually because they thought it was going to be a quick open a book, do a spell, you're good, you're a witch. No. A lot of people that get into this, they're like, I didn't realize there was going to be so much reading and so much sitting around meditating. I thought we would be a lot more hands-on active. So really examining what your motivations are behind what you're trying to get out of witchcraft is a big thing. He goes on to say further on down, it is a path of wisdom, not curses. So yes, I do agree with that. Witchcraft is a practice in, being more wise and being more cognizant of yourself and the world around you than it is about, just sending spells going, Spell work doesn't play nearly as big of a part in my practice now as it did in the past. And I am okay with that. Because there are some things that I'm doing now in my practice that weren't really being done before. Things such as sitting here and full on reading through a book rather than using it as a reference book. Things like reading through a sacred text and evaluating it and finding what verses would work well as spell work, or reading some of the wonderful, wonderful prayers in Judaism, and some of the reasons that they utilize those prayers, and when to utilize certain prayers and all that. I love reading some prayers. I have prayer books galore, and I have full on sat there and just read a prayer book. Not praying or anything, just reading a prayer book. And it's something that adds more wisdom to my practice. Yeah, I can sit there and read a spell book, and I have done that as well. Just read a spell book. Like, I've sat down with the 5,000 spells spell book and started from the beginning and started reading. I have read the Roman ritual, or at least a vast portion of it, a huge swath of it, if you will. Not the entire thing. And it's not that long. Not overall. Not, yeah. Once you get into the flow, it kind of flows through. But reading something that is sacred to so many, like those prayers or sacred texts, or even reading a witchy book, you know, reading those and going on that journey in depth brings so much more depth to my own practice and so much more wisdom than just lobbing a spell to somebody or at somebody or towards somebody's general vicinity. Anyway, he goes on to say in the next paragraph, thinking about your motivation to study witchcraft, magic, and spellwork is an important exercise. Why do you want to do this? What is the reason and motivation behind it? And I would say to people about putting that down on your beliefs page. What are you searching for? If you are doing a beliefs page, which I'm going to relook at my beliefs page. I haven't done it yet this year. I don't think I did. Not this year. I did it towards the middle-ish end of last year, whenever I had my military weekend, or my military annual tour. That was last August. I actually, do I want to put it off? No, I don't really want to put it off. I was going to consider putting it off and just making that an annual tour thing, where I just sit there and, during my annual tour, map out my practice. And, this is what I do. This is what I'm studying. This is what I believe, and putting all that down. And also putting in what your motivations are with your practice. So, what do you want to get out of this? Or what do you want to do? Why do you want to do this? What is the reason and motivation behind it? Are you doing spell work because you need to get revenge somehow, right? No. Examine why you have that need for revenge. Is it justified? You may think yes, but really examine. Are you willing to let the universe right itself? Or do you really think that you need to be the one to lob that spell work their way? So, yeah, some things to consider. And we do have an exercise. And it's motivation. And it says at the very bottom of this, do not go on to lesson 1 before completing this exercise. So, yeah, I think lesson 1 starts on chapter 5. So we have, a week to do this. Actually, 2 weeks almost before we discuss this. So we good. We good. We got plenty of time to do this exercise. So get out your journal, Book of Shadows, what have you. I usually do things on a scrap piece of paper and then transcribe it really nice into my Book of Shadows. Just my personal thing. Eventually I will have a grimoire that is all like pretty and whatnot. That way it doesn't look like the hot damn mess that my Book of Shadows is becoming. Exercise 4, motivation. Think about what first drew you to witchcraft, including spells and magic. I'm going to stop there real quick. For me, and I will honestly answer this, is divination. Yes, I am still a divination fanatic. I love it. Can't get enough of it. What was your focus? Where Were you drawn to spells? I cannot read tonight. Were you drawn to spells? Some are not, and are actually afraid of spell work, and even revolted by it, but are still drawn to witchcraft as a path. What are your thoughts and feelings on the matter? Contemplate your motives for this choice on the path. Write a short paragraph or two describing your motives in whatever level of detail you would like in your book of shadows or journal. Put it someplace you will keep it and see it years from now. Okay, I'm going to take this one step further. Review it like at least once a year. I do urge you that, because your motivations as you progress will change. I can almost absolutely guarantee you that. So yes, absolutely. Make sure that you are, up on this, that you are examining your practice and examining your motivation of that practice. And depending on, and I don't want to necessarily promise this, but I'm going to. Depending on how personal I get with my beliefs page and my motivation part, which I'm going to include in my beliefs page, of what I look forward to in the future, I may share it on this channel. I don't want to guarantee I'm going to share everything, but I may share a good handful of things from it. There are things that are going on in the background that I am planning and hoping to come to fruition, that, again, will be revealed in its own time, as I've said before, but not nearly ready to disclose anything right now. But yes, I do have things that will be part of my motivation portion, at least going forward, that are currently in the works of starting to happen and starting to become a thing. As far as my beliefs portion, I may share the majority of that. Most of it I put right on here on YouTube for everybody to see. And I haven't really held much back anymore. At first I was really guarded and secretive about some stuff, and like, I don't know if I want to tell them that, or if that's the right wording, or maybe I'll look foolish. Now I just could give two shits less. Because whether, somebody thinks I'm dumb or not for believing what I believe, it is what it is. And I'm not going to apologize for it, on YouTube. Yeah. So that's what it is. My family, I will say, most, I don't think, I'd say the majority of them, all except for like one or two, have zero clue of my practice. And I'm okay with that. And a lot of it's because of who I used to be and how they still sometimes see me, what they still see me as, hasn't really changed for them, because they haven't really evolved past a certain stage. So, and I'll probably get into some of that in the future, but I think I might share, and don't hold me to it, but I might share my beliefs and motivations that I have written down either next week or before we start lesson 1 in chapter 5. So anyway, yeah, that's all that I have for chapter 3 of our Witchy Book Club series, The Outer Temple of Witchcraft by Christopher Penzak. As per usual, go ahead and get your copy down below in the description box. There's that Amazon link for you. I don't know anymore if it's an affiliate link or not. I can't really tell you. But some other announcements. I am working on the Patreon. I have been in contact with the Patreon people, the peeps, as I call them now, apparently, um, about getting my account unlocked because apparently, without the two-factor authentication thing, yeah, I couldn't get into my account to adjust the tiers and redo everything and re-examine how everything was. So I definitely want to do that and then, get the Patreon to a point where I'm satisfied with the tiers and being able to release those uh, for people to donate if they would wish. So, yeah. And then some other announcements. As for the channel, you will be seeing, and I've already started to do this with some of the videos, you're going to see a lot more thumbnails coming up. For the table topics, I'm going to have the table topic card pictured and put in there as the thumbnail. I'm going to have different ones depending on the topic and whatnot. So just know that those things are coming. I've already done it with the Inner Temple of Witchcraft where I put the chapters on there and whatnot. I will be doing that with the Outer Temple as well. I think I did to one of them. But I will be doing that as well with the Outer Temple of Witchcraft. That's something to, because they get more clicks and whatnot, and trying to grow this channel and growing the community around us and whatnot. I think that would be the best way to do it, is through making some of those needed changes, as well as making sure all the descriptions are correct, like putting my Patreon on stuff and ways people can contact me and whatnot, my Twitter handle and whatnot. I put a really cute dog picture on Twitter and only one person liked it. Just saying. Really cute puppy picture. Only one person liked it. Just gonna let that one sit there. World's cutest dog, one like. Just gonna silently judge you here as you go to Twitter and like. And if you're not following me, go ahead and hit that follow button on there as well. But yeah, I should probably put more pictures of Miss Jelly too, because she's the witchy cat. Yeah, and she is so tired, and I am as well. So I'm going to wrap this up. I will see you guys tomorrow for the Christo-Pagan series, the Witchcraft in the Bible, part 7. We are in the New Testament. We are going to chug along through those, those verses and whatnot, and we're going to give them the attention they're due. We're slowly getting through that. So, but yeah. Anyway, I'm going to, because you can see that as I'm bumping everything, you can see that I'm draining here. I'm going to go ahead and go to bed, and then I'm going to wake up tomorrow, which is Saturday, and I'm going to edit this and then upload it. So this is going to be a little bit of a late upload. I usually try to hit around midnight time frame. So if this comes up around like noon, it is what it is. I'm still having it on Saturday. It's okay. It just might be a little later in the day, depending on where you are. So anyway, sorry about the little bit of tardiness there, but yeah, just the way the chips fell today. But until next time, may you have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye-bye.